Hey everybody, welcome to Between the Lines with Chris Curran. I'm your host, and tonight we speak with Whitman Hanson, an Assumption alum. She has a master's in special ed from Simmons, post-grad from UMass Boston, former teacher, mother, wife, and Coco's former BCBA from Southeastern ABA, Erin Petersen. How's it
Hi, everybody.
going?
It's good. How are you?
Good. Can't
Good.
complain. Glad to finally get
Fan-
you on here. You've
yes,
been you
illnesses and crazy time aside.
Absolutely, you have a full schedule, and you've always been such a big part of Coco's life, especially in such a transitional time for us of receiving the diagnosis, trying to get on all these wait lists, whether it's speech, OT, ABA, just trying to figure things out. You were there from the beginning, so thank you
Yeah,
very much. We
anytime. He was a
heavily
pleasure.
oh, yeah. That's so
One of my faves for sure.
yep. Yeah, and you did a great job too picking who he would work with, and obviously based on the availability and who you had staffed,
Yeah,
but between having Erin and Kelly to start and then also having Tara later on, it was amazing. They were all
yeah.
so wonderful with him.
We got really lucky there that we were able to score them. I mean, it's tricky, you're sending people into somebody's house and hoping that they're going
Mhm.
to be able to imminent what you want them to be doing every day on a daily basis with them because I can't be there for every session. So,
Mhm.
I do try to kind of have my handful of go-to staff, and then, I'll reach out and get a staff from somebody else, and then I form a relationship with them. And so I usually try to go to them first. But
Yeah.
so I was really thrilled that we were able to grab them. And Coco was home at the time during the day, so that was helpful too. It kind of opened up my pool a little bit more of people that had day hours
Yeah.
because a lot of our staff is they work in schools during the day,
Mm.
and then they'll do ABA services in the afternoon or the evening. So the day hours do sometimes come a little easier for us, which is nice. But yeah, those were two definitely. Well, like you said, Kelly and Erin, and then Tara is just fantastic.
Yeah.
So she was a huge score too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We were very lucky in our time. It couldn't have been better. It was such a great blend,
Yeah.
between personnel, personalities, and all very intelligent and very empathetic, patient. You
Yep.
could talk to them, which was great
Yeah.
because we would always have questions on certain things that when they would leave, what are certain things that we could work on, and we would just kinda analyze what they
Uh-huh.
were working with Coco on, and it was just things that we applied ourselves. It was amazing.
Well, and I think too, like both, me, Tara, and Erin are all, young parents that have been, through just like the typical
Mm,
kind of development stages. And you get this, Coco's your first, and like kind of what to expect and what happens, and the sleepless nights and getting up and taking baths at 5 o'clock in the
yeah,
morning and things like that,
absolutely.
is so much of that is like for us too is teasing out and helping you guys understand like this is just typical 2 and 3-year-old behavior right
Yeah.
now. We'll need to focus on this later, but
Mhm.
I think that that's a big part of it too is just being moms and like getting the whole you're in the trenches of like early motherhood
Oh,
you know
yeah. Yeah, and it was perfect for us too because they were very knowledgeable. Which makes it a lot easier, right? And they're very
hmm
personable as well. Like I said, they
yeah.
were unbelievable, not just with what they knew, how they taught, but who they were as people. Um, because in that time of bringing people in your home, we wanted to do in home, we never had it before.
Right.
So then not knowing what to expect, and sometimes as a parent, you're like, "Ugh," like you want to do certain
Yeah.
things, you almost want to control the session. It was comfortable enough for us to kind of sit back, be part of what was going on, but trust the process because we trusted the
Exactly.
people.
Right.
That's
And you guys did a great job too, like, you would kinda try to fade off when you could, and then you'd come back and join the session when it was appropriate and,
Mhm.
take the ideas and the strategies, but then we also I felt like we had a good blend of, like, meeting you guys in the middle or meeting what you where you were at and what you were capable of with Coco at that time.
Yeah.
That's kind of one thing I do feel like we do really well at Southeastern ABA is meeting the family where they're at and not pushing them further than they're comfortable being pushed until it's time, until they're ready.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was something that we all as a team, you guys included with Coco, was waiting to send him to school till that following September,
Mhm.
and I think that made all the difference for him
Oh,
because he was
absolutely.
ready to go, and then he hit the ground running, you know?
Yeah.
So, it was I feel like those are the kind of things that, like, make a difference too, is we're not pushing him, we're not, go I mean, we push him, but we don't go too hard too fast because then we don't lose him, you
Yeah.
know? So, but he grew so much during that time too. It was really cool for us to watch. It was really fun. We would text each other on the side, and Kayla would be sending us videos and clips of new things that he did, and it was a really fun time for us to watch him develop too. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
it's
that
great,
was it was such a good time because 'cause you're watching all of that progress being made.
right?
Yeah.
And we would be like, "Oh my god, he's totally having like a growth, a mind growth, because he'd like
Yes.
I would be gone a week and I would come back and he'd have all these new words or, all these new things that he was like you could see he was watching a video and imitating it and knew what was happening and, it was so great. It was great to see.
Yeah.
Especially for me because I would come only once a week or sometimes every other week depending on what happened
Mhm.
and so I would see a lot of growth in that time too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And it was great growth for us as parents because we had to like any new parent, you have to be okay with other people working with your son, and then having a
mhm,
special needs son, you're a little bit I don't wanna say more in tune, but you're
right,
definitely hyper focused on the ins and outs of everything because you don't have the biggest community, um, for in the most part, in the beginning. You're still
right,
developing that. You're still learning
right,
what this life is for you, what it is for your child, and who you're gonna trust to let into that world.
right.
And, yeah, we learned a lot from it too. So that was
And even
actually
just, like, being okay with somebody coming in and being like, "This is what you need to do with your child. This is how you need to
yeah.
it's tricky, and I have families I mean, I've been with a lot of my families for a really long time, and, it takes a long time, and, like, you build this bond and this trust that, like, "I'm not gonna leave you hanging, like, try this," and, one of the big things that I do try to say, and I've probably said this to you guys a bunch of times, but I wouldn't ever recommend something that I wouldn't do with my own
Mm,
child or
yeah.
that I get it as a mom, like, if I'm not gonna be able to pull that off, I'm not gonna expect you guys to be able to pull that off.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And give whatever the intervention was for whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to get to a point where like for us, we're trying to get to a point that he can communicate his needs and his wants, and he feels safe, and he can access the things that he wants in his home on a daily basis, where he spends the majority of his time. You know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
he's like a functioning
Mhm.
part of your family, but he's able to, limit his frustrations and be able to access what he needs in a functional way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just it's hard. It's hard to walk into somebody else's house and tell them what to do with their child, you know. So,
Yeah.
you guys were great. You opened the door and would be there right at 9 a.m. Like,
Yeah.
morning, here
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah. No,
So
it takes a lot. It does when I would just think about that even from our standpoint of having someone in the house bright, 9 o'clock's not necessarily bright and early compared to how much
yeah,
he wakes up, but,
yeah,
you're still trying to figure out your day at
yeah,
that point in time.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Kayla would be coming back from her coffee run already. "We've been driving for an hour already."
Yeah, exactly. But it helped us transition into school so much easier because at that point in time, like, you don't know the school, you don't know the teachers, but
Mhm.
you're a little bit more comfortable and you've grown a little bit more trusting your son and how he responds to other people being around him, being in his
Right.
space, pushing him, but then also being patient with him. It's,
Yeah.
that was great to be able to see how he would respond in those different situations outside of from us because he's very
Right.
comfortable with us. So,
Right.
uh,
Right. Yeah.
how he would do in those other situations.
Yeah, and it took time, but he did a great job, and I'll never forget, like, the first time that he came over and, like, took my hand and sat with me. I was like, "Yes,
Yeah,
I'm in the club. He
yeah,
did it finally. He came and got me."
yep.
So, he knew who he felt comfortable with and, I mean, most of the people at that point that were in his life and in his orbit, unless it was a new staff that we brought in, like by the time Tara came aboard, he took to her right away. Like he
Oh,
was able to see like, she's a safe space. I'm going to jump in with her, and
Mhm.
they could really hit the ground running. So,
Oh, yeah.
um, those that year where he grew so much in that year.
Yeah.
He was just so fun to
Yeah,
watch.
and that was a good transition with Tara coming in as well. She has a great
Yeah,
presence. She's unbelievable with what she does, what she knows, and how she does it. Um, so that was you couldn't have asked for a better transition from losing someone that had
right.
been there from the beginning
Mhm.
to then her
Yep,
coming in. But the good part with having you is we trusted who you would bring in, and I think that
right,
was gained in that time just on a day-to-day basis,
right.
and just your selection. Because, like you said,
Yeah,
you weren't able to be there every single day, but
right.
knowing that you were following what was going on and who you had chosen.
Well, and I think that he just kind of built such a little fan club that, there was like daily texts going back and forth about what he was doing and what we needed to make for him, and what we thought he should do next. And so he was definitely in the forefront of my daily, communication, with whether it was with you guys or with Kayla, or with Tara and Erin and everybody. So
Yeah.
he just, he kind of has that presence that you just wanted to do more for him.
Yeah. And
He's just
yeah, and like you said,
Coco. I
early
miss
yeah,
him.
early in the morning, so we were
Yep.
one of the first people throughout the day.
Mhm. Yep.
So, oh,
Yep, there was many times that we would get there and he would just be getting out of the tub or getting back from a ride or doing his thing, but even
oh,
just, like, his eating habits and so many things, like, when you see them every day, like, to be able to truly see the progress from one day to the next of what he was doing. And I think that
mhm,
autism, ABA sometimes gets a bad rep in the press because of archaic old systems.
yeah.
And it's not like that anymore, as you can see. Like, it's very much child centered, and it's, built on the foundations of ABA, but we're not doing a lot of the things historically that give ABA a bad name,
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing for at least for me, I can speak on my behalf of any of that happening
Right.
or being talked about because we had nothing but the best experience. Maybe we got lucky with you and with the team that we had, but never
Yeah.
anyone's ever asked me. I've one from the other parents I talked to, they've never really had any bad experiences either.
Right.
But I also try to consider like, were we lucky? But
Mm.
hearing from other parents, they've
Yeah.
also had good experiences as
Good
well.
experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
mean, I think that just the practice itself has changed over the years, and, it's become more flexible within, you base all your decisions and everything on the principles of behavior analysis and the 4 functions of behavior and all that kind of stuff, but, it's a little less rigid, I should say,
yeah,
in different practices too, in public schools, in homes, like, there's a setting for everything. Obviously, if it's in a research situation, it's gonna be a little bit more strict and rigid, and things. But I do think over time, historically over time, the practice has changed quite a bit, and it's not like what it used to be.
yeah.
And I don't even know that in my career. So I've been doing this for 24 years now. And I don't know that it was ever really like that. Even when back in my early days,
Yeah.
that I ever really saw, I worked in a residential facility at the time. So it was a day school, and then the kids would transition back to the residential facility. So it was a little bit
Oh,
more intense, only because we could carry over what we were doing from the home to the school, like, and it was the same people doing it all day.
mhm.
But even still, like, when you read some of the accounts, I don't feel like you seeing a lot of that. And like you said, I mean, there's a bad apple everywhere that might be practicing that way, but for the general, you know, BCBA pool, I don't think you're finding that.
Yeah, yeah, certain things like that will be highlighted, but that's not the whole,
Yeah,
that
that's not the whole picture.
that's how I see it 'cause, you know, like I said, I can only speak on our behalf and on me. We had nothing but great experiences the entire time.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
every person all the days were good, even the tougher days where things were smooth, things weren't so smooth. It was very understandable that this is gonna change day to day,
Right.
and
Yeah.
overall, there was nothing but the best intentions for him, patience for him, um, and then there was there was always, like, extended practices, essentially. Like,
Mhm.
it was always, "We're working towards this. This isn't gonna happen overnight." And there could be
Right.
regressions, right, which we see from time to time, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it was, "This is what we're gonna work on because in 3 months, you might really see the effects." And those were things
Right.
that we did see, as you talked about, by the time Tara got there or by the time he was going into school, he was
Yeah.
it had changed so much.
And I think that's the thing too with specifically, well, I guess specifically with ABA, but is that, we do keep records and we do keep data and all these things so that we can start to see patterns of his behavior. So patterns of when he has a regression, like we kind of could tell when he was going to get an ear infection or he was going to get like a cold because he
Mhm.
started to kind of not perform at the level he was performing at, or he would withdraw a little bit, or things like that that we could kind of pinpoint where like, okay, well, this makes sense. So we'll see a kind of a little burst
Yeah.
in a few weeks, or the when he really started getting up at like 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, we would know that day wasn't gonna be as successful, obviously,
Yeah.
but, when you take data and you pay attention to all those little details, that's where the patterns emerge, and that's how we can find out where, Cole didn't have any really heavy duty interfering behaviors, but we do have some clients that do.
Mhm.
And we're able to kind of pinpoint why and when those particular behaviors are happening because everything is so data driven, which I feel like that's the piece of applied behavior analysis that, is really important that we do. Um, and that's the really important clinical part of that we do, but the actual delivery of the service doesn't look so clinical all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, it makes sense, like, Coco's a creature of habit. You
mhm.
can start to kind of pinpoint certain things that might prevent that meltdown,
Yep,
might help
exactly. Yep,
excel him in one area. That's not something that everyone can pick up either.
right, right.
That comes with a lot of that's day to day. That's
Yeah,
and two at the time where, in the early days, you'd have Kelly and then Erin coming in. It's passing notes too to find
yeah,
out it's not the same person 4 days a week, 5 days a week, so it
right,
was great communication through the team to go in from Monday to Tuesday and picking up where we left off or whether they wanted to focus on something that they were specifically, seeing some of the good results in,
right, exactly.
you know? That
Yep.
that was the great part.
Yeah, it was a good team for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. So you talked about the schooling, and some of that background. Can you tell us, like, a little bit about your teaching background?
Yes. So I went to Assumption. I was an English major randomly, and I thought I wanted to just be a regular elementary school teacher. And I was an English major with a social rehab minor, and I did an internship at the New England Center for Children. So it's a school out in Southborough. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. They
Mhm.
So it's grown quite a bit since then. I mean, they have like a satellite in Dubai now.
Wow.
And they have partner classrooms like all over the state too. So they'll go into public schools and have classrooms in public schools. But back then it was just there was like 8 to 10 residential houses. And when I say, I mean, it's literally this beautiful house in the middle of a street in Southborough and like the middle of a neighborhood. And I worked in this house that it was called Saddle Hill Road, and there was 9 5 to 10-year-olds that lived in this house. So I had a set of twin 5-year-olds. We had set 9-year-old twins, I think. I mean, they aged obviously while I was
Mhm.
there, but anyway, that was it for me. I never thought about ever doing regular education ever again. So when I worked there, I had a student, my case student. Things were very different then. We could take them out. We went and did things with them. I took them out on the weekends. She came to my house for Thanksgiving for 2 years in a row because she didn't travel home to her family. So it was a very different time, but it definitely like solidified what I wanted to do. Her picture was on my mother's mantle until the day they sold their house. It was like she was part of my family. So that was it. And then New England Center offered a master's program through Simmons. So I did my master's in severe special ed through them. So I was certified for all levels.
Okay.
And then, at the time, I wasn't really thinking I was gonna get my BCBA. I thought I was just gonna stay, in the teaching world and do that. So, I started teaching and I ran a preschool, integrated preschool, like Coco's preschool, in East Bridgewater for a long time, and that was fabulous. Like, I just every role that I was in, I had the best coworkers that I still talk to from I still keep in touch with people from the New England Center. Um,
Wow.
and it was just one of those things that, like, you're in this world and, it makes it so much better. But so I did that. I taught in that sub-separate preschool, and I did all, ABA style kind of interventions and things like that. But then I would run in the afternoon, I would run a classroom with, like, 10 to 12 peers and then however many kids on IEPs I had, and it was, like, a varying degree of differences, and disabilities and things. So that was really fun. So I got to run like a typical preschool curriculum too. And then I moved along and was the K to 2 sub separate teacher for a while. So that
Oh,
was, yeah. So I mean, I'm like teaching myself the curriculum as I'm going because I'm not used to, like, I was never an elementary ed major. You know what I mean? I was a
yeah.
special ed major. So I'm like trying to figure out how to do all that. And then I had Wes, who's 15 now. So I decided to take a little time off just from the, like, regular classroom, and, I did some consulting. And then, actually, no, during that time, I went back and I did a satellite program at UMass to get my postgrad to be able to sit for the BCBA exam.
Okay.
So that constituted of 9 months of coursework. It was 6 courses, I think, over 9 months, and then you have to do so much, hours. So I had to do, like, at the time, it's different now, but I think it was 1,500 hours at the time,
Wow.
and so much of it had to be face to face with the student, and then so much of it was, like, behind the scenes paperwork, writing reports, that kinda stuff. And that is where I met Anne, who is now our clinical director at Southeastern ABA. But she was my supervisor, and I would go meet her at a Panera Bread on a Tuesday night to, like, get my supervision. So she would come into my classroom at East Bridgewater and observe and make sure I was doing all the right things, and then I would go meet with her at a Panera. They used to give us free bread all the time because we were there every Tuesday night at close, so we would but yeah, so it was really cool full circle when we all came back to Southeastern ABA, and she was, because she was actually Amy, one of the owners of Southeastern ABA, she was her, supervisor too for her exam.
Wow.
So it's one big happy family. We all came back together. But yeah, so then I consulted for a while with the Pilgrim Area Collaborative and did some in-home services through them. And then I decided that I needed structure again because at that point I had Zach and my life was crazy. So then I went to Halifax and I taught in Halifax from kindergarten to 6th grade. So I was trying to teach myself 5th grade math so then I could teach it to my students. So that was fun. And then I ended up taking on so much with Southeastern ABA, I could make it a full time gig. And it was just the right timing, like with my family and being able to be flexible and stuff. So, I mean, you name it, I've done it. In home, residential, classroom, preschool, kindergarten, middle school. Yeah, I've kind of, and now my client caseload is, let's see, 4 to 19. So I have a 4-year-old all the way up to a 19-year-old, and I have a 12. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I have seen it all. But, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade any of the experiences I had. I mean, half the staff that worked, in my classrooms or in any capacity with me, probably, if there was 10 of them, 7 of them work with me still. Like, because 'cause they'll pick
Mm,
up cases after school and,
yeah,
a lot of the paraprofessionals in the classroom will pick up some hours after school or before school. Um, you know,
that's
so
good.
so it's really cool. Yeah, we've held on to a lot of staff and found great staff that way,
Well, it's definitely a community that can stick together.
for
Right,
sure.
so there's a lot of hats that you can wear.
Right.
If you're within the school setting and you have the appropriate degrees or whatever it is
Mhm.
that's needed to be able to transition to do something in ABA or in home, it allows you to kind of do that.
Right.
We saw that
Yeah.
in not exactly the same, but with baseball. Like since I played baseball, I could come home and then pick up lessons, camps, clinics. There are
Right.
things that are tied to that main skill that you do have, or that main job
Right.
that you have that lead over into other roles. But that
Exactly, yeah.
it, you know that's interesting, but it also makes sense that you're probably working with about seven of the same people, because
Yeah.
you can stick together, you trust each other, you're going through, I don't wanna say the trenches together, but
Right,
you're
but yeah,
you're
yeah.
going through all of these cases together where you guys have seen it all, and you just doing K through 2, and then you go to Halifax and you're doing K through 6. You're working with so many different age ranges, whether it's in school, residential, you just have so much
Mhm.
experience that you could apply it to something like ABA. Was there a particular moment? I know that you said that you were doing so much in ABA that you could transition out of school, but how was there a moment, or how was that transition from, okay, I'm doing school and this, I'm just going to do ABA?
Um, Amy, my boss was pretty, she would call me like every other week and was like, "Okay, want another case? Do you want?" Well, before I even picked up I remember who my first kid was, and he's still one of my clients to this day. Um, and wow. So I mean, I've been there for 8 years now, I think, doing that. So he's grown quite a bit. Well, I've been with him, but I don't really know. There wasn't, like, a particular moment. I do remember that I was, like, frazzled. The kids were getting older, they were doing more, their activities, I find myself being out from 7:15 to 7 o'clock every night because I had so many cases, and, one it like, I'm just one of those people, like, I have to get like you saw, if I
Mhm.
couldn't get to your house that week, I would be like, "Kayla, I'm so sorry I can't get there this week. I'll, X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
And when I'm doing that with 12 cases and I'm trying to jigsaw where to fit them all, and realistically, she finally came to me and she's like, "Can we just like look at your time? And if, I have this particular case that's opening up, would you want to make the jump?" And, Ryan, my husband, and I sat down and we were like, I think we can do this. And, I'm lucky because Ryan's in the union. So we never tapped into like school insurance or anything like that. So I didn't have to worry about like what the insurance package would look like.
Mm.
I mean, you know what I mean? I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
It was really cool because now I'm not kind of stuck on the school schedule. So I can, travel at different times. The boys play sports that they travel, so I can do that a little bit more.
Mhm.
I can do drop off and pick up and, pick things up in between. And I've been very lucky that my cases are pretty, within like a tri-town area kind of. So I can do a visit, scoot home, like throw dinner on the stove and go back out and do another. So
Yeah.
it's just been very flexible for my family.
Yeah, because
So
you always kept great communication with us, knowing that you were as busy as you were, that you would have the time to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm going to be there to fill in for
yes, yeah,
Kelly. Kelly can't come, I'm
yes,
going to fill in." So, not only were you communicating like, this person might be out, I'm gonna be in, I'll be here at this time. And then, like you just mentioned too, "Hey, this, kinda backed up. I'm not gonna come today, but I will be there tomorrow." You'd always had
right,
that level
yeah,
of communication, which is very big, because in this world, communication is everything inside of
right,
a world where communication can struggle.
right,
Right? So,
exactly.
we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to communicate because we have a child that might not be able to communicate his wants or needs.
Exactly.
So, that was
And I
that was
think,
really
like, to
helpful.
that point, I got to the point that I didn't feel like I was doing anything well, I was running from school to my afternoon cases, so I wasn't really fully prepared for the day, and then I would be, not getting my stuff prepared for the evening because 'cause I'm at school all day, and then I go home and, like, my house is in chaos. So, it definitely got to the point that I was, like, burning the candle at both ends,
Mhm.
and, the being able to dive into this world more kind of just it just tipped the scale that way, and what I was doing in Halifax wasn't, it was more typical special education in the terms of, like, I was doing, like, math supports and reading supports, and towards the end of my time there, I was doing more behavior, but it wasn't like we didn't have, an autism classroom, or we didn't have, like, a therapeutic learning center in that building at
Mm,
all. So it was all, kids that are in mainstream classes, and it wasn't I loved it, and I had a great time, and again, like, the people that I worked with made and the kids that I worked with made it an amazing experience, but it wasn't my wheelhouse in the sense that I wasn't doing autism, I wasn't working with kids on the spectrum, I wasn't, using a lot of those skills that I had had, and even, like, my when I was working in the preschool, it was more because we would, kind of every disability came to us there,
yeah.
and then they kind of went off to their different placements, but in Halifax, it was strictly like reading support, math support, and just some typical behavioral stuff like kind of
Mm,
thrown in. Or we, would come upon a client that or a student. I call them clients now, but they were students, that needed a little more support, and we would be working to find the right placement for him or her. So it was just kind of a different experience. I learned a lot about like social emotional things that I wasn't as well versed in, and I worked with this amazing school adjustment counselor. I just had dinner with her last week, and we've stayed really tight too. And she, like, we were that last year together. I wouldn't have survived without her. She was just, like, such a great sounding board, and, like, I would call her and I still call her for recommendations if somebody needs, a support or a resource that I don't have access to.
yeah.
So, you definitely build, like, a community, but I think that was the point where I was like, "Okay, I'm not doing anything right." Like, I can't I have no room to, like you said, make a movement so I can cover for a staff person,
Mhm.
and I always want the staff to feel supported that if they need a minute or they need a day, they don't necessarily have to cancel on the family because, if I don't show up, it's not a big deal, but when the staff doesn't show up, it gets tricky,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, especially because they're such a part of the routine,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And the days that we would have to cancel because Cole woke up at 2:30,
Yeah.
he'd be looking around at a certain point in time because he knows someone's supposed to come through the door, but he's also
Right.
so tired that,
Right.
you know
He can't even keep his head up.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you start to break the routines and it throws them off a little bit, and yeah,
Right.
so no, you're right, keeping that routine and making sure that the staff is supported. It's a big
Yeah.
thing. It really
Yeah.
is.
It's
Uh,
it's definitely a dance with that,
yeah, becau
especially during cold and flu season when everybody's sick. And it's tricky because, like, you're going from one house to the
mhm.
next. So you're like, at what point do I draw the line and not, bring the cold I was just exposed to at one house to the other house? So it does get tricky there because you're trying to make the decision that's best for the kids and the family. And, so
Yeah, and holiday season comes up. People are gonna
yeah,
go away, like, "Hey, this person's
right.
gonna go away for a couple days," because they have a family. You
Right.
try you
Yeah.
you know, you have to keep
Yeah.
that in mind too. It's like Thanksgiving comes around, then you have the holiday, like,
Yeah.
there's Christmas or New Year's or whatever people are celebrating. There's so much
Right.
going on, so it is that understanding that, like, November, December can be tough because people are sick, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holidays, people are gone.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense, and yeah, I mean, and you don't wanna miss any of your kids' games. I
Right.
mean, we
Yeah.
didn't really have to worry about it because we were a morning session, but
Yeah.
you're still trying to live life as a parent, as a wife, as a husband, whatever you are
Yeah.
in those moments.
Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky that most of like I said, I'm local enough and I have so many of my families I've stayed with for so long. They've practically grown up with my children. So they know like, it lacrosse season they played on Mondays and Wednesdays, so they would see me Tuesday or Thursday.
Yeah, yeah.
So everybody's so flexible like that too, and
Yeah, I mean,
that's really
that
helpful.
favor's definitely returned because
Right.
people see what you're doing, and to know that you're doing it for their family
Right.
goes both ways, in many of those aspects.
I like that I've built the relationships. There's so many things in like the ethics code of being a BCBA and all this, but like I think that the relationships that I've built with the families are the most important thing because I want them to be able to feel like they can reach out if they are in crisis or they need something. I want them to feel like they can get my ear no matter what time of day it is.
Yeah,
If they need somebody that is going to understand what's going on. Um, so I feel
yeah.
like that's a huge part of it is building that trust and having people, having my families realize like I'm gonna call and tell her that I have a problem, and it doesn't matter if it's Sunday, she's still gonna respond to me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. No, no, you've always been invested, like heavily invested with everyone that you have. At least from our experience, I can only talk about this because like we're literally sitting here talking right now.
right.
So, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? We're talking about what you do and how much you've helped Coco and have helped us. So it's like you're still there,
yeah,
you
yep,
know?
and you know it, you can't get rid of me.
Yeah, yeah.
I know your mother-in-law.
Yeah, exactly. You become yeah, exactly. You become part of the family and you
Yeah,
still ask like, "Hey, how's everyone doing?" And you just follow up. How's West?
right,
How's West's leg? How's he doing? And
yeah.
it's good to be able to
Yeah,
have that
because you
relationship.
all become like you spend that much time together, you're gonna get to know each other's families and
Exactly.
things that because it would be uncomfortable if you didn't, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely.
So,
And we've talked about it. We've mentioned it a bunch of times. For those people who don't know, what's a what's some general information on ABA? Like what is ABA for people that don't know?
okay, so ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. So it's the science of behavior. So you're looking at like in really technical scientific terms, you're like looking at a behavior, and a behavior can be anything from like an unsafe, aggressive behavior or self-injury or something like that, which most people like that's what they think of when they hear behavior. But it's also like the behavior of eating and drinking and completing tasks and things like that anything that you do is technically a behavior,
Mm,
right? So there's some behaviors that you're trying, or behaviors or skills is probably a better word to use, that you're trying to acquire, right? So like we're trying to acquire communication skills, and we're trying to acquire skills for, daily living skills, and we're, you know, social behaviors like turn taking and things like that that you want to increase. And then you have behaviors that you also want to decrease. So you're trying to find ways to teach and intervene on things to either increase a behavior or decrease a behavior. So, we use a lot of things like reinforcement and prompting and shaping and things like that to kind of build one piece of the behavior, and you're reinforcing the behavior because you want it to be a positive thing that then they want to do again in the future. And then with behaviors that you want to decrease, one of the things that we really look at, and I talked about this a little bit, is finding the function of the behavior. So why is the child engaging in the behavior that they are doing?
mhm,
So like if even so like say a child is like swiping the desk, right? So you put some toys on a table and he swipes the toys.
mhm.
You want to take a step back and be like, okay, well, why? What's motivating him to swipe the toys? Is it because he doesn't want to do the task? Is it because he likes how you respond to the task? Does it just feel good internally to just crash something because that happens? It's there's four functions. There's attention, there's sensory, which is when it just feels good. There's escape, and then a tangible. So he wants access to something. So usually we'll take a step back and try to figure out, and then respond in a way to help shape that behavior to look differently.
Mm.
So that's a very basic. um, it's a lot of it is reinforcing, and for lack of a better word, I don't even want to use the word punish, but putting a consequence on a behavior. So,
Mhm.
and a consequence doesn't necessarily have to be negative.
Yeah,
But when you engage in a particular behavior, X, Y, and Z happens because we're trying to deter you from wanting to engage in that behavior again. So if you have a child that's actively engaging in a behavior to get your attention, you try to be proactive by giving them attention when they're being appropriate and getting access to that attention without having to engage in the behavior. And then
yes.
maybe not paying any attention to the child when they're engaging in the behavior that they're doing. But you're trying to be proactive. And then as soon as they start behaving appropriately, oh my God, you're doing so great. Look at that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's a very basic form of it. But, at the end of the day, functions of behavior, and then, trying to reinforce the behaviors that you want to see happen again, and kind of, negate the behaviors you don't want to see happen. But a lot of
yeah,
it is data driven. That's a huge part of behavior analysis is taking data and looking for patterns, and looking for cyclical behaviors. I have a lot of kids that will engage in a particular behavior at a certain time of year, and a lot of that has to do with like medical reasons. So I have a kid that has severe allergies, seasonal allergies,
oh,
and we
yeah,
know like boom, it's time. So, things like that. That's one thing we always do is say, like, rule out, and we've probably done this with Cole, like, rule out anything medical. Like, even if you think it's a silly doctor's appointment, take them because you never know. It might just be a random ear infection that's throwing him off.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the first step is ruling out anything, medically or internally that could be going on to be causing a child to behave a certain way. Because a lot of times they can't communicate with us to tell us how they're
Yeah,
feeling.
and
So,
a lot of them have gut issues. Like you said, there aren't
yep.
allergies. Cole would get ear infections and double ear
Hmm.
he'd usually get a double ear infection by the time you found out because
Right.
he has such a strong pain tolerance
Yeah.
that by the time he was pulling on his ear and like you talked about, sometimes those, negative behaviors
Hmm.
are caused just from something going on internally that you can't see.
Yep.
It's nothing that's happening right there at that moment, but for them to
Right.
try to process or sit down and do something at a desk or to color,
Hmm.
they can't get past that first initial maybe pain or uncomfortable feeling that they're going through with
Right.
that they can't tell you.
Right. And that's one of the things with, like, always taking data and, like, you'd see them with the book of, like, writing down anything that happened because then we could go back and piece together, like, "All right, this happens every single time we do this particular activity."
Mhm.
And with Cole at the time not being able to say, like, "No, I don't wanna do that. I wanna do something else," like, a lot of the times his response was just to get up and walk away.
Yeah.
So essentially that is, he's leaving the area or whatever and he's not complying. But really, if he could say, I don't love this puzzle, I want to do something else, you know what I mean? It would be different.
Yeah.
But because he can't necessarily communicate that, he behaves a certain way. So then we were able to teach him, like, I want to be all done and move on to something else. And then it's an appropriate way to get
Mhm.
out of doing something that you don't necessarily want to do.
Oh,
And that's a big thing too, is like recognizing like the kids aren't going to love everything that we do. And there is a point of like having them to be able to tolerate engaging in an activity maybe they don't love,
yeah.
with
Mhm.
it's, they would prefer to color, but we're going to present a puzzle like during school and real life situations, they're going to have to endure activities they don't love. So, you're building up their stamina to be able to tolerate those things, but then appropriately
Yes.
be done with it. So, for him to be like, I'm all done, or like hit, his button that says he's all done or whatever it might be. And that's where like functional communication training is huge, like being able to express their needs and have their needs honored when they do express it, whether it's picture exchange, verbal, sign language, whatever it might be, being able to actually honor that and say, like, great, thanks for telling me. And then they're reinforced because they got what they wanted out of it and they're more likely to have it to be able to do it again,
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
No,
So,
it's so true. Cole will do certain things like that with bubbles, and you get
yep.
fired from blowing bubbles the whole time,
Hmm.
but you tell him, "Hey, if you want bubbles, just hand it to me."
Yep.
Well, you can't go back because you told him that, so
Right. Well,
"Here
yeah.
you go," and you're like, "I gotta keep my word."
Yeah, exactly. Because as soon as you break your word, they remember that. And then they're like, well, why am I holding up my end of the bargain? Because you're not doing
Yeah,
yours,
what
you know?
yeah,
And
exactly.
we would do that a lot with him, like, I mean, we would spend hours out in the driveway blowing bubbles with him, but
Uh-huh.
a lot of it, like, we would turn off the bubble machine or wait for it to be empty,
Yeah,
and then just sit there and wait until he somehow communicated, whether that was taking our hand and putting it on the button or going to get the bubbles and handing it to us, things like that. That was like, functional communication at its earliest stage, so,
yeah,
and then over time, he was, like, starting to articulate words and everything, which was awesome,
yeah,
so
yeah.
but yeah, so that's kind of, I mean, a very vague and very probably choppy way to describe ABA, but
No, no, it makes so much sense. It's about understanding the behaviors, the good,
mhm.
the bad. I mean, like you said,
Yeah,
anything you're doing is essentially like it's a behavior. You're presenting
right,
something with any of your actions.
right.
And
And there's a reason for it.
yeah,
There's something motivating it.
mhm, yeah. And for you, you're a BCBA.
Yep.
What is that?
So I'm a board certified behavior analyst. So I took that 6 course series and then I did all that like observation and then I would meet with the supervisor, and then once she signed off, you have to sit for an exam, so it's a national exam. Um, I did that in 2008, I believe. It was before West was one, so 2008. Um, and so basically, that you had to pass the initial test, and then I have to keep up so many credits. Every 2 years, I have to recertify. And then in the
Oh,
last probably 5 years, Massachusetts put it, as a professional licensure. So I'm technically a licensed behavior analyst in the state of Massachusetts as well.
okay.
So, those, like, continuing ed credits qualify for both licenses. So I think it's 32 credits every 2 years that I have to do. So it's just like my teaching license that you have to do so much, like, extra coursework to stay up on top of, like, new research and strategies and things like that, and then I maintain that. But basically, we have RBTs, which are registered behavior checks, so, um, it's kind of like trying to think of a good comparison, but basically it's like the step down before you've taken all the coursework. It's like a
Mhm.
40-hour, it's kind of like a crammed session of it's a 40-hour coursework, and then you take a smaller test, but you're able to be the one providing the day-to-day service, and then you're overseen by a BCBA.
Yeah.
So usually, like in my role now, so our company is all based through insurance. So there's certain roles within a case that I can do. So I do all the assessments, I do all the parent training, I do and all the supervision. But in theory, I can't like provide direct service on an ongoing basis.
Mm,
So I could provide direct service to like fill in as needed, but like I can't be the staff person that comes every day just because of
mm.
the structure of the way the insurance what they approve, and because it's a medically necessary service, which allows I mean a medically necessary need, which is why we are able to provide it through insurance.
Yeah.
So that gets a little tricky. In public schools, BCBA's a lot of their role is consult, um, which I struggled with that because I'm not good at just saying, like, here's a behavior plan, go try and do it, and not be the one to try to sit down and help
Y
do it,
yeah.
I definitely struggled with that. I did a little bit at the beginning of last year, and I had such a hard time because I'm like, okay, here's your behavior plan. Now I have to leave you in chaos, and I can't stay and help.
Yeah.
So um, but the public school BCBAs, I mean, their job is almost impossible because they just have so many kids that they're trying to see and support, and it's getting better. I know, like most of the districts have multiple now, which is fantastic. So they're able to provide kind of more of a intimate level of service than they used to. So
Yeah. Which
that's good.
which I feel is just it's so needed because it's such a vulnerable thing, and
Hmm.
it's something that definitely requires consistency and patience,
Right.
don't get me wrong, like, it
Yeah.
100% requires the right people to be patient that maybe you're not seeing results right away, but
Right.
it's such a day-to-day thing that it can be tough for anyone who gets overwhelmed with it because it requires a lot, like,
Right. And that's the
emotional
hard part
too.
too is we'll recommend an intervention and we'll say like we need to try this for 6 weeks before we can decide that it's not the right one, because it might take them that long to kind of buy in
Mhm.
and make show progress. But when you're in the moment as a teacher in a classroom, that's really hard to do if there's something disruptive going on within your classroom, to be like, all right, we're going to try this for 6 weeks. So that's where I struggled with being able to be like, all right, here you go, I'll be back in a few weeks and we'll see how it's going, as opposed to just getting down and, helping, like rolling up my sleeves and helping in the classroom.
Yeah.
So, I definitely struggled with that.
Yeah, which makes sense, especially if you've been so hands-on for so
Right.
long, where you're like,
Yes.
"This is kinda different."
Yeah. Even like there was a gap between my 2 teaching gigs, and I did all consulting, but it was a situation where it was a small enough group that I was able to go spend time in every classroom. So at least I felt like even just the short time I was there, I was an extra set of hands to help get through, whatever was going on in the classroom.
Yeah.
So I definitely I give so much credit to the BCBAs because they run and run and run and run. So
Yeah.
they're busy for sure.
Now for you, can it be difficult finding like, back to in-home and, can it be difficult finding matches between, like,
Mhm.
parents and kids and the personnel that are maybe assigned or that you assign or that you oversee?
Yeah. Well, in general right now it's really hard because like industry wide there's a huge staffing shortage because
Mhm.
there's just the need is so high and, thankfully there's so many options out there, but it's hard because, say there's 100 people that want to work in this field in the area and there's 10 companies or like options to work at, kind of the pool is thinned there because people are going in all separate ways. So, I know every company, people that I've talked to, like everybody's kind of struggling with staff right now, so that's tricky. But definitely, even like when I have like my go-to people, sometimes like it just isn't a jive, and it's hard because feelings are involved, and people, get emotional over it and feel guilty, and it gets tricky like that. But 9 times out of 10, it's nothing personal. It's just not people. Not everybody is going to jive.
It just
So,
has to click.
right, right, and
It really does.
I've been really fortunate that it hasn't happened too often. Like, usually I can kind of say like, all right, I feel like this is going to be a good match just based on what I know of the client, what I know of the family, and but it's definitely happens, and like it also runs its course, where somebody takes somebody so far and then says, I think I need to take a step back and let somebody else bring in a fresh perspective, So that's happened. That happens more often than not that, somebody kind of leaves and says, like, I feel like somebody else needs to step in. And like for generalization purposes too, like, if Coco can do something with me, but he can't do it with anybody else, then it doesn't really help his cause outside of, our one-on-one situation. So you want him to learn to generalize across people and environments and things like that. So that's kind of a reason why we would kind of pull staff out too. But thankfully, knock on wood, I've been pretty lucky that, I've been pretty good about matching,
Yeah.
playing matchmaker with families and staff. Sometimes you don't have a choice because the need is so great to have somebody in
Yeah.
the role. But we're plugging along, so
Yeah,
we'll see.
it made me wanna ask because we got very lucky, right? So,
Mhm.
sometimes you don't think about that, you're just like, "Oh, this is always gonna work out."
Right.
But
Right.
it has to leave you with the question of, what if some people aren't so lucky, you know? Like,
Mhm. Yeah, and I
or
mean, it
number
100% happens, and just because at the end of the day, you're in somebody's home, right? And you are attempting to support them in their parenting role,
Mhm.
and you might have different priorities. Like that's a big thing. Like I'm not going to tell you to work on something and spend your time and effort on something that isn't a priority for you guys.
Yeah,
And if it's not something like this is not I'm not saying you guys, but like just for an example,
yeah,
like if eating at the table isn't a priority, then as long as they're eating in an appropriate, socially appropriate way, like my kids half the time are sitting on the couch with their plates,
yeah,
So it's really like, what are your goals as a family? What are your priorities as a family? And like obviously, as long as it's safe, we're going to support that
yeah,
and play to those priorities where so that might be something that like a staff just can't get behind, whatever they're working towards or they're not seeing eye to eye on what they're working towards. So that might be and for no, no ill will, but just they're not kind of working towards the same goal. But it does get messy because obviously it's like human emotions involved.
oh,
So
yeah, yeah, that's what like I said, we were
uh,
very lucky we didn't have that situation where, you would introduce us to someone, and then we had to call you and say, "It's, who
yeah.
else you got?"
Right.
Or vice versa on the other end of like, "We just don't wanna go back there."
Right. Yeah.
We were very fortunate um, in that situation.
Yes.
For you guys, do you do more in-home or in center?
So we don't have centers. So we are all technically in home or in schools. So we have school contracts too. So we have probably, gosh, I don't know at this point, maybe like 6 or 7 BCBAs in schools. across the South Shore.
Wow.
So they'll contract with us if they like have a hole in their their unit. So like uh I know I one of my coworkers is, in a preschool, and she's specifically in a preschool because they just didn't have someone to fill those hours
Oh,
to meet the needs of the IEPs. Because in the public school, it's all IEP minutes, so
yeah.
if they don't have enough BCBAs that can spread themselves to get the minutes completed, they'll contract with us. Um,
Oh, that's
we've done long-term subs, we've done, a variety of things, like just going in to do an evaluation because they just don't have time to get an assessment done, things like that. So it's all either in home or school consult, pretty much.
so you had mentioned IEPs. What is an IEP?
So it's an individualized education plan, and it is a legal document that basically spells out how we're going to meet the needs of the child and what the goals are for the year. So what kind of accommodations are going to be in place, what kind of modifications are going to be allowed, where the service is going to happen, how many minutes per week of a particular service, be it OT, PT, speech, that kind of stuff. Um, how often the behaviorist is gonna or the BCBA is gonna consult with the classroom teacher. Um, the service is gonna happen in the classroom or in a different environment outside the classroom. Everything from transportation services to testing accommodations, which you won't have to worry about that for a while. But
Yeah.
so anything that could potentially impact the child's education on a day-to-day basis is somewhere in this legal document. So you meet once a year and review and make sure that like check on the progress and see, are they meeting the goals? Do we need to update the goals? All that kind of stuff. Is everything kind of on track for whatever's going to happen next? And that. So you meet with the team once a year. You can meet with the team as many times as you want, but traditionally it's once a year that you meet with them to develop a new IEP.
And you've been on both sides of the table, right? Have you been on the
So
school side and
yeah, so I have run many a meeting
Mhm.
in to write the IEPs for my students, and then I have been on the other side, like as technically we can't act in an advocate role, but we can come as like a member of the team.
Yes.
But traditionally, I'm coming on behalf of the family, not on behalf of the school. So yeah, so I've been on it on both ends in that, and it gets tricky because I've written so many IEPs and I've attended so many IEP meetings, and it's hard when I think something should be somewhere in an IEP and it's not, and I'm in a kind of a tricky role there. So,
Mhm.
I've been pretty lucky, I should say, that like most of I can usually present an idea I have in a meeting, and the schools are pretty welcome, to take my ideas.
Yeah.
Um, but, that's when I can kind of chat, with the family and just say, like, "You might wanna recommend this, you might wanna recommend that," that kinda stuff, or, "Did you ask about X, Y, and Z?"
Yeah.
Because it's tricky, especially if you're new to it, you don't know what questions to ask or what it should look like, or and that's where, there's a whole another world of educational advocacy that you can get into, that you can hire somebody to be your advocate.
Yeah.
But thankfully, you guys have not needed that. I mean, I'll never forget the meeting when we went to the meeting when Cole had just started, maybe?
Mhm.
I think maybe he had just started, and I was, like, floored. I loved them. It was like I watched it, and I was like, "This is the right place for him. This is fantastic." They were fantastic.
Yes.
So that was not a meeting that I ever had to walk back out of and be like, "I think you need to do this." Because they got it, and they were great, and they were so obliging to shaping that, like, to being
Yeah.
like, "Okay, we're gonna wait till September. Alright, we're gonna start this many days. Okay, we're gonna add a day. Alright, we're adding a day," and they were so great with the way that they kinda rolled with it, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. Like, having that's why I asked too, because you were there with us, but then also
Yeah.
having a school in Miss Alana, who was his teacher last year, just everyone seemed to be on board and the communication was just open.
Right.
Eh,
Yes. It was like a definitely an environment that I felt like I could voice my opinion,
mhm.
and it wasn't gonna be like, "Who are you? Why are you?" You know?
Yes, yeah, I know not exactly everyone has that experience in IEP meetings. I've heard
Right.
things from, other friends or people that
Yeah.
I just talked to of some of the difficulties that they've had as a previous teacher or as a parent in what they had
Yeah.
gone through, and I'm just sitting back like, I mean, we haven't had that many, but we've had some pretty good
Yeah.
experiences with the ones that we have had, and I'm very appreciative.
Well, and I feel like it set the tone for you guys too of, like, what it should be like, you
Yeah.
know? That it should be a nice, cordial, open environment, that everybody's taking everybody's opinion, and being respectful of it and feeling like everybody actually has a seat at the table. Because in theory,
Mm,
that's what it's a team meeting and, every discipline. So the parents, and when they get older, the child attends. So I have a student that comes to our IEP meetings now. It's awesome. Um, but like, the classroom teacher, the speech path, like everybody has a seat at the table, and it's nice when everybody's voice is heard,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. No,
So
it's important because everyone there that you're talking to, they have things written up, they have things that they're observing, things that they've
yeah,
noticed. I don't get to see him in school,
right.
right? I know how.
Well, and that's kind of a nice piece that I have is that I can go in and observe in schools. So I
Mhm.
do that for families a lot.
Yeah.
And it's super helpful because I'm like, you are not doing that at home. You know what I mean? And you can do that at home if you can do it at school. So, and that's the purpose of it is to generalize those skills that, he might do in one environment and not in the other. And, what can we do to support that in the other environment that is not happening? But that's like the benefit of my position too, is that I can go in and see what they're doing. And, parents don't always have that luxury.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Now, I know that you've talked about kinda having your plate overloaded and, making a transition from in school and ABA to ABA. Like, what else are you doing for work-life balance? I know you're at games, you're at events,
yeah.
what are some of the things that you enjoy to kinda help balance everything out?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky right now. We're definitely in the throes of like actually, I should say it's settled down a little bit, but I have two sons and they both play multiple sports. But now that they're a little older, they're figuring out like where they really want to put their time and effort into. So we've gotten our weekends back a little bit, which has been nice.
Oh,
High school sports lends itself to that where it's weekday games. So my husband and I this summer we hiked a ton, and by hike I mean we would find these paths and walk in, but we would do that. So we would try to like spend a weekend day and like take off. Now we can leave the kids alone, but we would take off and go find somewhere to walk and go get lunch or whatever. Um, so, I mean, my flexible schedule also allows me to, like, get out for a walk with the dog every day and,
mhm,
things are a little bit more hectic right now, but, like, my regular norm is that I can do some of those things during the day, and then I can gear up for, like, second shift at night when I, like, go off to do my visits and then do
yeah.
the drive around. Now that both neither boy plays hockey is lovely because I'm not out till 10 o'clock at night at the rinks anymore. So, I don't know, I guess I'm still kind of investigating, how to really make that work. I'm not great, I will say I'm not great about, like, not checking my email and things like that, it's just force of habit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I would like to be better about that and be like, "Okay, I'm gonna shut that down for the night, and, tomorrow's a new day, and it doesn't need to get handled right this second." So that's definitely something I would work
I
on if
I do the same thing where I'll check my Outlook, see what we have going on, what the emails are going, and then you'll respond to an email, and then the other people won't respond. And
Right.
you're like, "I'm in such a rush to get this over to everyone at 10:30 at night, and no
Right,
one's gonna
yeah.
see it."
Yeah, and I have, like, my tragic flaw is also, like, if I get, like, an email that's like, "Hey, can we chat tomorrow?" I immediately think it's something wrong. And I'm like, "Okay, is everything alright?"
Ye
You know?
yeah,
And 9 times out of 10, it's, like, a scheduling thing or, like, a, "Hey, I have this idea," or, like, "Can you bring that game to bowling on Tuesday night?" You know what I mean? But I just have it in my head that it's, like, something wrong and there's an immediate problem that needs to be fixed.
oh, yeah,
So that's definitely, like, one of my issues as well. But, yeah, I mean, now that Ryan and I are, like, the kids are a little bit more independent and stuff, we do get to go out, like, and have dinner as 2 adults and have a conversation and actually, like, catch up with what's going on and
Yeah.
what's happening next weekend and that kinda stuff. So that's kind of a nice luxury as having older kids is kind of
Yeah.
afforded us.
Yeah, that is good. You
So,
need it. You
yeah.
need it.
Yeah, it's been a few years of not doing that, so but talk to me during the summer when it's lacrosse season and we're in a different state every weekend,
Oh,
but
yeah.
for now, it's things are chill, so that's good.
And let me ask you this, like, what is some advice that you would give parents or guardians that are, maybe just recently received a diagnosis, they're considering ABA services, they've heard of ABA services, but don't really know what they are, the different therapies, um, what is advice that you would give to new parents to having a child on the spectrum and maybe what some of their first steps should be?
So, I mean, I think once you get the diagnosis, it opens up like a lot of resources are available to you. And I think like this is one thing I remember sitting down with Kayla and Rosemary and chatting with them for a little bit. I think we were on the phone for like 2 hours about the different options of services. So, depending on what age you're at when you get when you get the diagnosis. I think you can attempt a center-based situation. You can attempt in home. You can access early intervention. I think early intervention, regardless of whether or not like you actually get time with the providers because they are really spread thin.
Mhm.
And I think you guys had a similar experience because it was just the play group that you went to, right?
We just did a play group. That was it, and it was good in the sense of it was kind of our first time out of the house and Cole being around kids,
Right.
but it also was very hectic because,
Right.
kids were just running around everywhere, and we're new to it, so you're just looking around at what's going on,
Yeah.
and
Like, what is
Cole
happening?
would sit
But
on my lap
the
and just
connection that they give you gets you kind of enrolled and going and things squared away with the public school because
Mhm.
once they turn 3, they can access public school services.
Exactly. No, that's fine. Yeah, no,
To
exactly. I think everything for us played its part. So yeah, we were in early intervention not all that long, and then when we were thinking about moving on and finding other services, you guys were
Yeah,
right there. So it was like just the
right,
smoothest transition of to what we wanted to do to for him to have more individual time with someone. That was
right.
great because he had the ability to interact with other kids there. He got to watch, which was big, but
Mhm.
to have someone truly be able to sit there and focus and work with him meant all the world
Was
to us.
huge.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what
So I think every family dynamic is different too, and like what their availability is
mhm,
too. Like not everybody is able to be home and have the in-home services during the day like that.
yeah,
So that's a helpful thing. So I think that you kind of look at your family dynamic and what you're able to do. And then you look at what's out there. So you look at, the places that have centers and in-home support. So there's a lot. There's so many like in our area that you could go to the center during the day and then have services at in the afternoon. Or you could just do the center and not do in-home services at all. Or you just do the in-home until he's ready to make the jump,
mhm,
and then, if you want to add on services before or after school, you can do that too. So I think my biggest piece of advice would be just do your research with the different options that are available and understand, what those options look like. One of the things at in-home, what we don't focus on a ton of table work. We're not having discrete trial is a big part of ABA, and it's one thing that when people hear the term ABA, they associate it with discrete trial, which is like a very simple like presentation of stimuli that you're getting. You're running trials, and um, it's a lot of time at the table, and Cole was 2. We weren't going to be like
yeah,
you're going to sit at the table. So I feel like the different like go visit the different centers and go visit and talk to the different people that you have an in-home ABA company come out and talk to you and tell about what they do, because everybody has a different need,
yeah,
and I go into a daycare, and one of Tara works in a daycare and runs services in a daycare because they're there from 8 to 5, and that's where it makes the most sense to do the services right now. So
mhm,
there's something around for everybody, based on what your family dynamic is and what you need. I think like you guys, I mean, you guys have been like pioneers with that. Like you get on the chat rooms, you make connections with people, you go to Texas and meet these people that like these community of things, and you learn that like what you're going through, you're not so isolated,
Yeah.
you know? Um and I think like you guys did a really great job of advocating for Cole's needs and with your own families too, of like, no, this is Cole and this is what he needs and we're not going to change what we do to make anybody else happy. Like this is what Cole needs at the
Yes.
time. And you guys have been so lucky having Kayla's parents across the street to like learn and grow with him and like, they're like, big supporters of that. But it's tricky.
Mhm.
Like you take Cole into a family party somewhere and people don't know how to respond and interact, and you guys have done a really great job being like, "Nope, this is what he does and this is fine and we're going to make this work for Cole."
Yes.
Um so I think building your community and reaching out to people and, don't isolate yourself. Definitely, make connections with people, ask for resources. There's so many things out there now. There's Raising Hearts in Hanover. That's a place for kids with all kinds of different, neurodivergent situations, and they have all kinds of resources and drop-in play groups, and they do all kinds of events, and you don't have to just have autism to do that. Unfortunately for my company, we do also have Navigate parent coaching for kids that are not on the spectrum, but that's like a private pay option.
Yeah.
We've recently kind of thrown that out there because not everybody has the diagnosis, and the wait lists right now are so long to get a diagnosis. So, kids aren't getting services that they need because they can't get the diagnosis. So we did
Yeah.
start offering that too, to doing some parent coaching for kids without the diagnosis. But
Yeah.
yeah, put yourself out there, you know, make connections.
Yeah. I was glad I did because, well, Kayla's a little bit too, but, I'm an introvert. I know sometimes I don't seem like it. I very much like to stick to myself.
Mm,
And what was it? I think last October, it was like October 2024, I created Facebook and got back on Instagram because it was just like I
yeah,
never really did. I got away from social media. I was just kind of
yeah.
doing my own thing and making sure we took care of Cole and the family and
Mhm.
didn't put everything out there. And then kind of came into myself of like, I want to share my story. Um, just because there were so many of my friends that didn't know anything about it.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it was also tough too because, like, if my family has dogs, Cole, if a dog starts barking, he gets a little bit afraid and has a
Yeah.
tough time, so you miss certain events because of that,
Yeah.
and with the opposite working schedules, it always made it tough to do things as a group
Yeah.
7 days a week. You know, we don't have 7 days a
Mhm.
week, so trying to find the right amount of time to do that, it allowed me to share what was going on, who we were, how we were living, and create that awareness for my friends and family, and I actually put it on Instagram where I opened it up and said, "Ask your questions. You don't need to be
Mhm.
politically correct, just
Right. Yeah.
just ask and we'll go from there," and I
Right.
remember getting my first message, and then a second, and then 4, 5, 6, and then people were just asking, and all of a sudden it was kids I played football with, baseball with, people I knew from California that are like, "Hey, my niece is autistic. What's one thing I can do to be a better uncle?" It was
Yeah.
things like that, and I'm like, "Oh, this is cool," because now people can kind of ask me questions in my very limited experience, but in my experience because I was the only person that they knew.
Right. Yeah. And it puts a face on it,
It
you
does,
know?
and I was so my thing was like like, quote, unquote, "normalizing" it to say, like,
Mhm.
let's not make this a thing that people are afraid to talk about. Let's get
Yeah.
comfortable. Let's get comfortable in this."
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's great.
no,
No, you guys have done such a great job, like, putting yourselves out there and advocating for him, and I was always so impressed by Kayla.
oh, yeah.
Even just hearing, like, just the way she would be like, "Well, Cole really needs X, Y, and Z, so that's why we're doing this," she was always very, one step ahead of knowing what he was gonna need,
Mhm.
but advocating for that as well to be like, "No, this is what we need to do for Cole."
Yeah.
And, I feel like you guys have always done such a good job with that, and I'm just like, I'm so proud of you both, like, coming from,
Yes,
like,
thank you.
just newly diagnosed, and I'll never forget that phone call with Kayla and Rosemary, and, um, I feel like I think I talked their ear off for, like, an hour and a half about all the different things, and, and I was like, "No pressure," because obviously I knew Rosemary from school, so,
Yeah.
no pressure that you have to go with my company, but this is what we have to offer, and this is what somebody else might have to offer, and that kind of stuff. But I just feel like you guys have come so far from your like, newbies into the role and allowing people into your houses and, making those big decisions. And, I know it wasn't always easy. So
Yeah. No, thank you. We
you've done
appreciate
a great
it.
job.
It means a lot, because you guys were there from the very beginning.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that first moment, that vulnerability of like, "All right, we're gonna have people in home. This is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna learn." And just
Yeah.
especially having you throughout the steps along the way, it it allowed us to have a lot more confidence in those situations.
Yeah.
Because if you had to worry who was coming in home to take care of your
Right.
kid, it's very tough to start even thinking about school, start thinking about
Right.
trying
Yeah.
new things because if that had failed initially, now you're starting to question, is any of it gonna work?
Right.
And
Right.
we never
Absolutely.
had to do that. It was just great people, great schedules, consistency, and watching the progress that was happening that allowed us
Hmm.
to kind of expand our knowledge and our growth and all
Yeah.
of that. So it definitely ties in with everything that had happened.
And I think that's a big thing too for new parents, like parents with new diagnosis. Like, it's not gonna change overnight. It's not gonna get better
Mhm.
overnight. You're gonna see these tiny little baby steps that are eventually gonna add up to something bigger.
Yes.
And that's really hard. Like when you guys, when we come in every day and people are like, "What are you doing?" And we're like, "Well, we're not gonna sit down and we have to build a rapport with him first. He has to like us. We wanna be his favorite person.
Yeah.
So when he sees us, he wants to be with us." So that's really hard to do is to be like, "All right, what are we doing here?" And then recognizing that those little itty bitty steps are gonna add up to something big over time. And, Cole is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
When he went to school, he was ready to go,
He was ready.
Yep.
Yep.
For sure. So, yeah, I mean, he was definitely I miss him terribly, but I'm glad that I get to follow his journey on social media and stuff, so
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys can't get rid of us.
I know, and we don't plan on it. So, for you, where can people learn more about your company, like, whether it's
Yeah.
websites, social media, anything?
So we have a website, it's southeasternaba.com, and then you can also find them on Facebook, and then also it's Navigate Parent Coaching that's also on Facebook. So we have, a public page for both Navigate and Southeastern ABA, but
Okay.
both services are on the Southeastern ABA website. And there you can kind of see what we do, the areas we service, the insurance companies that we take. And right now, like every agency, we have a wait list. But definitely, kind of don't let the wait list scare you. Like get on, kind of be the greasy wheel, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
because it moves along faster than you think, and get on those wait lists and kind of get the ball rolling because it does take time. So you want to, and like reach out to the people in your community that I had a woman. I do a group on Tuesday nights for our clients, and we go to Boston Bowl, and I have up to 25 kids a night on Tuesday nights come in and bowl and have pizza and hang out and play games and stuff. And I had a woman come up to me and say, like, is it only clients that can do this, or like how does this work? And um she just happened to be there with her son, and she put in for an intake, and he's going to start joining us at bowling in a couple weeks because she's like, so all I want is social skills. So we actually, Amy just did his intake today, and he'll be joining us at bowling in a few weeks. So
That's
you never know who you're
awesome.
gonna, reach out, put the feelers out because you never know who you're gonna talk to, and that kind of gets things rolling. Like Rosemary knew me, so we were able to connect that way, and like
Mhm.
you have somebody to talk to that's knowledgeable in the field. So
Yeah,
it's definitely put yourself out there. But southeasternaba.com, and we're on Facebook for both Southeastern and Navigate.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
You never know. You never know.
right.
You build those contacts, you put yourself out there, and you start figuring things out as you go, and you'll run into some amazing people. You really
Yeah.
will,
Oh, for sure.
you
Yep.
know?
Yeah. I mean, if my career is any indication in the amount of people that I still stay in touch with, and they're just great, wonderful people that have done so much. So, um, you know, that's definitely why I stayed in the field that I did. I just had the best experiences. So,
Well, from the experiences that we've had, it's allowed us to advocate a little bit outside of what we had thought, essentially
yeah,
ourselves. Some of the projects that we have going on, never would have thought we were gonna do it.
yeah.
You know, you
No, I'm so proud of you guys. Like you've kind of taken it and run with it, and making it your own, which is fantastic.
we're excited.
Yeah, me too. Anything I
Yes.
can do to help, I'm always here.
Oh, you're in.
I'm one of Coco's OGs. Are you
Yes.
kidding me? I'm a lifer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Erin, thank you for being on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
It's always great talking, great catching up. But,
Yep.
yeah, you were, and still are just such amazing and a crucial part to our journey.
Thank
And
you.
we'll never forget it.
I appreciate it. He was an absolute pleasure, and so were you guys. So I would do it a million times over.
Yes. Thank you very much, and we'll be talking soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.